Hello, I'm Canay Atalay and welcome to Regenerative Innovation with Canay. In this program, we are exploring the depths and the widths of innovation that is beyond just meeting the market expectations, but actually how we can utilize our human capacity by being the inventors, the innovators who can prioritize life and who innovate for the well-being of humanity and more than human life. And with that invitation, we are also exploring what ways, what technologies, what principles, together with amazing guests around the world who are not just talking about regeneration, but practicing regeneration. And these invitations are for us to take better care of ourselves, of each other, and our beautiful planet Earth. Today, I have our dear Joachim Stroh, who is a co-founder and product and business development lead of Haifa DAO, who is also our RegenerateX collaborator, which is a decentralized organization they initiated 5 years ago. And they start with seeds, regenerative currencies, and to coordinate the activities, they gave birth to this DAO, and now the last 5 years they have been initiating amazing collaborations around the world and bringing the regenerative cultures and economies with the blockchain platform to different organizations, communities. And I'm very happy to have you here. Joachim, welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Janaya. Looking forward to this. Glad to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. Many people know about DAOs, but Joachim, can we start with a very simple explanation of what is a DAO, as if we are talking to a 12-year-old child, and how DAOs are different than traditional organizations?
Yes, of course. So if we go back, in the internet time and space, Web 1, Tim Berners-Lee invented sort of the web, right? We had our own spaces, our own blogs, our own websites that we could create, very decentralized actually at that time. Everybody could do what they wanted to do. And then came Web 2, right? So suddenly, 20 years later, the web became highly centralized, right? And also commercialized. So the first e-commerce site popped up, right? And people started to realize there's a lot of commerce and a lot of transactions possible in this new, more interactive web, right? And this is the internet that we know today, right? This is the highly extractive web. This is where our data gets collected and sold to third parties. And I think we're seeing a shift now again. The internet is kind of shifting into these paradigm things every 20 years or so. Now we're seeing a third shift back into this so-called Web 3 space, which is highly decentralized again, right? This is where the data goes back to you. You own the data. And this is exactly the DAO space we're creating now. DAO stands for decentralized, right? And then A, autonomous, and then O is organization. But organization can be anything. In this space we're creating now, we're inviting everyone who has an idea, a business, or just a community, right? Or just a group of people coming together and then create something new. Because the container is there, this new vessel is there that allows you decentralized, away from sort of regulatory constraints that you typically have if you create a startup today. You do it inside this DAO construct. And then you can really invite your friends, your people, your co-workers, your co-creators, and then build something beautiful. And that's the goal, what we are building with the Haifa DAO and with the other DAOs out there, to say this is not possible. You have a new vehicle, it's a new vessel that allows people to go out into the world and build these beautiful, innovative solutions that we all wanted to see.
This is awesome. And when I heard from Ronnie that you have been actually managing how many people over the last 5 years without even one single bank transaction. I forgot how many people have done transactions on Haifa DAO?
Yes, it's in the hundreds. I mean, imagine we started this 5 years ago, right? As the DAO, so we used the DAO to build the DAO, right? And we had, over 1,000 transactions or decisions really made inside the DAO without a CEO present, without, a top-down organization where you report to your managers. It's a flat organization. It's a very sociocratic organization. It's built of circles, a new kind of organization, really. And we made it, through the almost close to 6 years now, right? Without having a rigid, hierarchical structure that you see in traditional organizations. Again, that's the big difference to what you can do in this DAO construct versus what you're forced to do inside traditional hierarchical organizations.
Yes, and when you're inviting people to think out of the box, actually, it's a shift in the mindsets, which I love. Like all of a sudden, you are free to do whatever you want to do as long as you have this fair circulation so that other people give consent. And it's a total different way to collaborate, to see your roles, maybe even more fluid in the way that you can create value for each other. But also, it's a collaborative space, and economies, instead of really trying to extract from each other, you focus more on giving and circulating so that everybody wins. And can you explain how the Haifa DAO is working to drive regenerative economies, and what kind of impact is happening, and you are also foreseeing in the near future in areas like environmental sustainability, social equity, and community-driven innovations?
Yes, thank you. Great question, Janai. So we've been on this journey for quite a while, and we're sort of breaking away from this traditional notion of you're competing against each other, right? There's this volatility, there's this urge and this need to be better than the others, right? What we're building inside our network is really a much more collaborative space, a space that is anti-fragile, and a space that is more non-rivalrous in nature, because people don't come here to compete or outcompete each other. We come and are invited into these spaces as members, and we're trying to build these solutions together. And that's true for an organization, within, Haifa and the hundreds of other DAOs that are now trying this out and wanted to see how that feels like, how it's being created. And that extends to outside the DAOs too, because DAOs are sort of built for the internet. They're meant to be native internet organizations. Like Haifa, we have core team of about 30 people, hundreds of people around the Haifa organization, and we're all over the place. I'm the only one in New York here, actually. Everybody else is in Europe, Central America, you name it, they're there. And we're working together to solve this problem, right? In our case, we've built the platform, but we have many other regenerative players out there that look at ecosystems, that look at eco-villages, that look at energy communities in Europe. So this is the space that we're entering now, a regenerative space. And there are many models, many theories of change out there. Berkana model is one where we're seeing sort of decline of current systems, and we need to start building the bridges into the new systems, right? And another one is Kate Raworth's model of donut economics. That's a beautiful model she created, and that aligns so much what we're doing, bringing people, if you're familiar with that model, bringing people into that green donut space, right? Without overshooting and going above the ecological ceiling, and without, going deeper into the social issues that you're causing by any shortfalls you have by not recognizing the equity and the equality and the people that you have in the space that you want to support or nurture too.
I think that invitation to really make the transition to a world that is emerging and don't get the shock of a collapsing system because all the eggs are in one basket, but more importantly, making the mindset, I don't like the word mindset, but like the mental shift, the way we are thinking, the way we are creating pathways of thinking, the way we are collaborating, how our cultures are established. So making that transition is very important. And most of the time when we are talking about AI, people get it. Like AI changed everything, and it's gonna get even crazier. And I have a similar feeling with blockchain and especially with DAOs, because the pain points of the existing systems are so high and people are looking for alternatives already, but there is resistance also to step into different models. Why do you see that? What are the biggest challenges, resistances at the moment for people to step into playing with DAOs and experimenting with DAOs? And how do you address those challenges, and how do you make it easier and more invitational for people who don't even understand so much about the technology to say, yes, I'm gonna experiment with that. I'm gonna try this.
Great question. So what we're starting to see is, people taking the first steps on this bridge, into this other new landscape, into this other container, right? But of course, there's kind of a fear, right, to say, what is this new thing? People haven't experienced that yet. They don't know what it is. It's still early days. If you look at the adoption lifecycle model, it's still the innovators, it's still the early crowd that is now seeing this technology for the first time, right? And as you know, in the blockchain space, a lot has happened in the crypto space, with bad investments and scams really in that space, that people sort of misrepresented and misused what is possible. But now we're coming back to what actually is possible in this new third generation blockchain space. We can create these new decisions and invite people into these much safer spaces. And that's what we're trying to provide, a space of trust, a space of getting to know the others, finding the others who are there, right? And then making these connections. And this is where you suddenly drop your whole notion of, oh, this is the competitor, right? No, you're here with me. You also have a role to play, right? This is the larger landscape here of the thing that we're building together. And it's such a beautiful concept. So I've been enjoying this for, over 5 years now, living, breathing, this context of how do you build these solutions together, right? Without finding, roadblocks where it doesn't go forward because, somebody says, or someone brings in a lawyer, right? Or you have to deal with financial, banking aspects of that. You can drop a lot of this and then move into a DAO space where it's purely about the interactions, about the humans. In fact, we called our DAO the DHO, so it's standing for Decentralized Human Organization, because we wanted to bring the human to the forefront. Even you mentioned AI, at the age of AI, AIs are good at sense making, right? They give you the big picture, they give you the things you haven't thought about, right? And here you have a space where you can take that information and then go through the sense making process, but then it's a human to make the decisions, who are deciding we're going this path or that path. And if we're all aligned, if we're seeing each other as we really are as true humans, not putting up a mask, as you do on social media sites or in traditional organizations, you work in a different way. You suddenly change, and this letting go of things, right? This letting go of the baggage that you bring in from these old systems, right, is the hardest part we find for people, trying out this new world. And we can only do some hand-holding, right? We can only do some, we call it onboarding, to say, make that easier. But it's still you who has to take the first steps and then letting go of this baggage, right? And then see what's possible.
Yeah, I think that's like an amazing shift. And it's not like Janai 2.0 versus Janai 1.0. It's a total different human. Name can stand the same, but when you make that switch, you start an alternative reality. And I think that's what's happening at the moment. And I'm so happy that, we get the chance to collaborate and create programs together, experiences together, such as in RX on Board, the Regenerative Business Innovation Program, having those weeks together with the participants where everybody get a chance to understand what regenerative innovation on different disciplines might mean, interacting with different experts, then it becomes obvious that the new world is inviting you to be someone different. Not because what you are is bad or lacking something, but there is an opportunity to become even freer and more abundant in the way that you are sharing and circulating. And there, the biggest question mark for people, okay, now who is my community? Like, how am I going to do this? Because it's not an alone path. And the DAO solutions coming in at that point, you're not alone. There are so many of us who are stepping into that new reality and ready to share the gifts transparently with fair value circulations and consent without so many middle bureaucratic struggles. So I really like that invitation. Yes. Yeah. And what I also like, while we are bridging these worlds with the invitations of programs, with processes, with frameworks and platforms, also the collaboration part, the community part is a huge aspect. And you have been creating so many beautiful case studies and stories around the world. And as humans, we learn fastest, whether we are children or adults, from the stories. And I want to ask you, especially for the spirit of collective intelligence and collaborations, how do you, as HIFA, partner with other organizations, communities, or stakeholders to advance regenerative innovation? And please share some case studies, some juicy stories with us.
Sure, sure. Yeah, we recognized early on that we can't have a single platform that solves everything for everyone. There are different needs, there are different audiences, there are different people with different problems, right? So we started to break it down into these segments. For example, we started with the socio-ecological segments. That's the seeds regenerative currency. We recognize a lot of eco-village projects out there sort of helping to build these permaculture farms and bringing people back into new contexts and realizing you can actually be more independent and you can recreate things that you don't have in other contexts. So socio-ecological was a big one for us. But then we moved into socio-political contexts and see if our solution can help even in, in difficult political situations. For example, I was involved in a project in Myanmar. There's the military junta taking over the country, and then you have the government establishing itself outside of Myanmar. Could you create political movements using a platform like through DAOs and coordinate activities? And that's really at the heart of what we're doing, right? So it's coordination of who's here, what are the stakeholders, in what role, what can you do, what influence do you have, and making that transparent, right? You need to see the people here. You need to see the contributions. You need to see the value that's being created. And that is so important. And the DAO and the blockchain, the philosophy of the blockchain really opens up that space. It says from day one, well, every transaction is recorded and it's immutable. You've done it, it's there. If you want to trace it, yes, you can, right? But it's also a signal to others to say, well, we don't want to hide away things here. We're protecting the members, yes, but we're seeing what we're building together, and that's a critical piece. So social-political movements, I think, is another big one. Then you get into social-cultural things. The World Heritage Sites is actually a very decentralized organization that sees communities, locally, protecting their heritage sites, right, and wanting to get organized and deciding what to do here, how to bring in, people who wanted to enjoy the sites and how to make decisions. So we've been in conversations there. And then, of course, socioeconomic places where you just see a different way of creating value chains, of creating supply chains with a platform like that. So we're expanding that now and really focusing on, again, the donut economics model, where we pull projects now into this green space, right? And the projects we've been working on, I mentioned the energy communities in Europe is a very important one. This is recognition actually driven by the European Commission to say, look, we recognize there's this energy community, almost like an entity in Europe now. And it's a place where villages come together and say, we want to have independent energy demand and supply away from the big grid providers, right? Again, that's the classic traditional centralized organizations who can extract the value. We can do that independently. We can bring that into the village, make the decisions for ourselves, and supply our evidence here and come to much better solutions. And then you look into that space and say, well, what about some of the agriculture stuff, regenerative agriculture? Can we look at our food supply chains within the village and create a circular economy in that space as well? Well, guess what? All of this is possible because this new blockchain has the capacity to not only make these decisions, as I mentioned, but also contribute and reward people through what's called the tokenomics models. So you can create independent tokens for everyone to say, let's recognize the token and let's move away from the fiat currency, right? There is still the interface. You still need to talk to banks, right? You still need to pay your bills, of course. But increasingly, you can say, well, this is the token I earn. For example, at HIFA, I earn the HIFA token. And that represents the value I contributed to the organization, right? So really looking purely at the value, not just the time I spent or the project I completed or the report I wrote, right? This is so much more of me, myself, right? Coming through helping to build this organization. and tokens help us. The decision models and the governance models that are coming out of these new worlds, they help us and they construct. So it's a huge, coming back to sort of business innovation too here. There's an explosion of innovation happening right now because of this shift towards a more decentralized space and environment. And suddenly, you move away from this classic thinking of, oh, first step is I need to provide a patent. I don't patent my idea, right? And protect my intellectual property, right? Now it's like, no, we don't need this stuff. We innovate in this space. We create and we share what we've learned with others. So there's a whole knowledge commons being built inside these new containers, right? We are able to say, yes, we know how to do this policy. We know how to create this this solution to a problem you have. You can have it. You can use it now inside your DAO and replicate it over and over and over again. That's the beauty of the model, right? This is where we see we can invite all of these others that are out there to say, we didn't want to create a company, really step away from that, but we want to create something beautiful together, and that's what you can do in this new kind of space.
I love that. Thank you so much, Joachim, for these beautiful sharings. There is so much more. I invite our audience, our community, to really check haifadao.earth, because they have amazing case studies. You can totally go online and do your own DAO and practice this new way of collaboration, decentralization. It's coming, actually, it's here. So we better get on with it. It's time to mature up, to grow up, folks. There is no excuse. Thank you so much. So now, in the end, we have an inquiry circle. Joachim, the previous guest, Daniel Hyun, he left you a question. And he's asking you, if you had no worries about making money, you have the money to survive, to thrive even, all the money in the world, what would you be doing?
Yes, that's a great question. I'm sure you already know my answer here.
Surprise me.
I would do exactly what I'm doing now, right? Because we're creating the conditions of realizing your full potential. We're creating the conditions to be who you are, right? The true self can show up in the spaces we're creating. And I've been doing this for all these years now. As I said, yes, there are bills to pay. There's some fiat currency that needs to come in. But the rest is a purely new kind of playground, right? Where I can create my things, I can innovate with others, right? And we can build and really solve these wicked problems that are out there. That needs to be the focus, right? That needs to be the thing that needs to happen. Working on these regenerative projects, right? Working on the innovations at different levels too, right? So it's not only one organization, it's many organizations all together. This symphony, this orchestrating of all these ideas and how we can align ourselves and really move forward into a better future, right? That is what I'm seeing here. That's what I'm working on today. And here I am.
Love it. Thank you so much. And what is your curious question to our next guest? Mustafa Osman from Istanbul Municipality is the advisor about foreign affairs to the mayor.
Yes, there are many different ways of putting that. But for me, what you've been working on, Jana, is the regenerative innovation, right, in the different contexts, and I love to explore that within the context of a city, right, a city like Istanbul, right. So what would be the first kind of project or projects that you could launch to bring them into this innovative space, to bring citizens of Istanbul, the people of Istanbul, closer to nature, right, in harmony with nature, and building something beautiful. I think that would be a wonderful project to explore for him. That I think would be my kind of question.
Beautiful question, an invitation to all of us and to our collective, maybe to use an Istanbul DAO. Thank you, thank you, Joachim. It's always great to see you, and we catch up later. Thank you for participating.
Thank you.
It's happening, the decentralization, the blockchains, you being free of signing your own contracts, putting your vote on what is meaningful, what is valuable to you, and really bringing your gifts out there, circulating regenerative economies, new collaborative models. We had a beautiful conversation with Joachim from Haifa DAO, and we work together. I love the way they are facilitating this transition. And I'm looking forward to also get hands-on and experimenting with all these amazing possibilities out there. And if you want to stay in touch and make it even more fun, join us in regeneratex.co, our community platform where we have amazing people like this and many more partners. And we can really make the bridges together for ourselves to take also better care for each other and our beautiful planet Earth. Thank you for watching, and I see you in the next episode.